My name is Noel Nefshier. I'm Director of International Business Services and Global Strategic Partnerships with Automation Alley, located in Troy, Michigan. I also want to introduce our interview subject today, Terry Potter. She is Director of the Foreign Office for the state of Michigan in the UK and the European Union. Terry, thank you so much for taking time to visit with us today. Today's interview is to talk about trade and investment opportunities for U.S. companies, Michigan in particular, doing business or thinking about expanding their markets for the first time in the UK and the European Union. So with me again is Terry. She's Director of the State of Michigan office in the UK and the European Union. So Terry, right out of the gate, I'd like to talk about what kind of services that you offer to Michigan companies that are looking to expand into the European Union for the first time, or if they're already established and looking for greater market share in that part of the world.
Yeah, thank you, Noel. Yeah, delighted to be here today. Most clients, US clients that we work with, are looking for boots on the ground in any overseas region. In many cases, this is some kind of sales representation, a distributor or a strategic partner. And a large percentage of the projects we carry out is to find such partners. We work with the client to build a profile of the sort of company that would be a good fit for them, exploring what complementary products they might be carrying, what customer base they need, the extent of their operations, their sales channels, etc. Part of our value add is that we are approaching potential partners or customers in the UK and Europe as an independent third party with the backing of a state corporation like the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And we're not regarded as another sales call. Our consultants are very experienced at reaching the decision makers, and thus they're able to present the product or service to the company to assess their interest in further exploring collaboration. We won't try and sell your product. I think we'd be doing you a very great disservice if we did. No one can sell your product or service better than you can. So our job is to find the right sort of partners for you, give them enough information to be able to assess whether it might be something for them, and open the door for you to speak with them directly. Even more important for US companies, especially during these difficult times, is that we can test the market for your products without you incurring the travel time and expenses that you would normally. We can provide local market information, explore the product area in a particular European region, and speak with potential partners to get feedback and assess interest. We've actually found that US companies have been very active in using our services over the last year while they've not been able to travel. So we're using this time effectively and proactively.
You know, one of the points that you and I talked about before was the fact that you advocate for companies in Michigan. So rather than these companies trying to do cold calling to companies in the UK and the European Union, you as an affiliate of the State of Michigan office have that weight behind you to get people to pick up the call and to respond to your inquiries about potential business partnerships, and also to arrange matchmaking meetings with companies throughout Europe. And you know, we found that also whenever we worked with the U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. Commercial Service overseas, when they call from a U.S. embassy or a consulate, people respond to that call, and we find that that's also the case when you call on behalf of the state of Michigan. The people are certainly more responsive, and you sort of cut to the quick and get to the right people, which really saves a lot of time and money. So that to me is probably the best value proposition that you offer. So with that, I want to move on to our next question. If you could talk a little bit about how Europe in general is recovering from the coronavirus and what this year's outlook is, particularly as it relates to Brexit.
Yes, it's interesting because we lived through Brexit for 2 or 3 years, and it was all consuming. It was the most important thing on everyone's mind, and then suddenly the coronavirus pandemic happened, and priorities changed a great deal, I must say.
Sure.
All countries in Europe are at different stages of recovery, and they all have a slightly different timescale for getting back to previous levels. Brexit gave the UK autonomy on the rollout of the vaccine, which has arguably been one of the best in the world. 12 million people, which is more than 20% of the population, have had their first jab. And the UK is on track to reach 15 million first vaccinations by next week. However, across all of Europe, top-class universities and scientists have all been working together on the development of the vaccines, and the rollout has been good across many parts of Europe, which will ensure that European economies rebound strongly. On GDP, every economist will give you a different prediction on this year's recovery, and the global recession is inevitable. But it's much more positive now with the vaccination program. Consumer confidence is high. Increased levels of consumer savings will equate to higher household spending. And the latest predictions are that the UK and other European economies could return to pre-pandemic levels by early next year, which is really encouraging. In terms of Brexit,
yeah, we're seeing the same trend here in the States. I mean, they're projecting, depending really on what economists you listen to, but the average has been 5.4% increase in GDP for 21.
Yeah. I think across Europe, it's anywhere between 3 and 5 for most nations. And then, hopefully by next year, we should be back to where we were before. Brexit itself, the relationship between the UK and the EU is still very, very strong, despite what you may sometimes read in the press, which sometimes seek to show disparities rather than similarities. But both sides still share the same aims, technologies, security, and this close collaboration will continue.
Sure.
There will be some changes and product approvals, for example, but this will be over time, and we don't expect any dramatic immediate change, particularly for US suppliers. It's also something we monitor very closely. So as we work with every UK and every US client, we would warn them of any issues that they should be aware of when they're looking at new markets in Europe.
That's a good point, because despite Brexit, the European Union and the UK economies are still inextricably intertwined. It's almost like gum and hair; you can't separate the two, and they need one another too. So I think ultimately, this was clearly a sovereignty issue with the with people in the UK, which is why they decided to to leave the EU. But I think in the end, they're going to develop a cadence, and they're going to find a way to work together for the benefit of both the UK and the European Union. You mentioned technology. I want to circle back to that for a moment. So can you talk about how COVID-19 has changed the UK and the EU, for that matter, in terms of accelerating the adoption of technologies related to Industry 4.0. So I'm talking about advanced manufacturing, automation, robotics, big data, artificial intelligence, 5G, the list goes on. But before we respond, I just want to let you know how it's really changed. It's how it's changed America and me personally and professionally, because we're using these tools that we wouldn't otherwise be using. For example, the tools that we're using now, the video conference tools for this webinar. Nobody would have thought that we'd be able to effectively communicate using these video conferencing applications that we have in platforms. But I think people have become much more comfortable with technology, and make no mistake, this is no substitute for face-to-face interaction. And even with our trade missions, because we did a couple trade missions last year to Mexico and India that were virtual. And despite, they were successful, but they wouldn't have been as successful. They weren't as successful as it would have been had we been in country. Because clearly, when you're trying to do business with companies around the world, you need that face-to-face interaction, because in the end, it is truly about relationship building and trust. Not to mention that when you're on a video conferencing call, doing a business matchmaking meeting, you don't really have the benefit of seeing the operation physically, to make sure that it's up to global manufacturing standards. That is, in fact, a company that you want to do business with. Not to mention, you don't get a chance to meet with all the people at the company that will be critical to your success if you happen to move forward with a business deal. So with that, can you talk a little bit about the changes that have occurred in the European Union, the UK, as a result of COVID, when it comes to these new bringing these new technologies on board?
Yeah, I don't, there's been a bit of a hiatus because companies are having to deal with furloughed staff, working from home,
Yes.
disruptions to manufacturing. So all companies have had to get on top of the situation, perhaps before being able to move forward. So the hiatus may have slowed things down a little, but I totally agree that new technologies are vital for our key industries to continue developing. And the UK and Europe have been amongst the largest adopters of Industry 4.0, and they will continue. And I agree totally that if anything, the pandemic has actually highlighted increased demand for smart manufacturing or processes. Automation, AI, digital workflows are even more necessary now than they were before. And to your point with the video conferencing, I absolutely agree. People still want to meet face to face, and most salesmen I know are champing at the bit to get out to those countries once more. But I think we'll end up with a cross between the two. I think there would be much more done virtually for that initial meeting, for that initial discussion, to really find if you're a good fit, and then follow up with the market visit as and when we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're finding here in the States, and I'm just wondering to what extent it is occurring in Europe in terms of an increase in worker productivity as well as efficiency. A lot of companies, have their, as you mentioned, their people are working from home, but they're finding though that they really haven't missed a beat in terms of productivity. Clearly there's something to be said for that. And I got a feeling that, this is gradually becoming, I hate this expression, we've heard it so much, but it is the new normal. So even if COVID were to go away tomorrow, I think a lot of the changes that have taken place will remain in place as we move forward into the future. So talk a little bit about what are the most highly demanded U.S. products, services, and technologies, and in the UK and in the EU as well.
Yeah, I think, there are a lot of products and services that you mentioned earlier, certainly video conferencing and e-commerce, remote learning platforms, safety equipment and technology. I mean, PPE was obviously in great demand, cybersecurity, but all of these sort of products and services is more from a worldwide perspective and not specifically a UK or European need.
Yeah, it was sort of an unfair question, because the EU, like, it was a monolithic entity, but you have 28 nations, so, and everybody has their own. But speaking,
I'd love to say, well, this is what we need, and give you a shopping list, but any niche product is always of high interest, but any products or technologies or services that have a unique selling point over the competition will capture attention. If your product is lighter, faster, greener than others on the market, if you can show cost savings or increased efficiency, if your product will improve the user's life in any way, or a manufacturing production line, There are lots of industries where new products are of high interest. I mean, in the UK, well, across Europe, we have a very high aims to be carbon neutral by 2050. So solar, renewables, infrastructure projects in road and rail in the UK particularly.
Sure.
But I wouldn't want to limit Europe's interest in this way. As you say, we represent 28 countries in Europe as well. Any product can prove of interest for the right end user or business partner. And we are seeing increased interest in looking for new sources of supply outside of Europe, as UK and European companies are exploring new supply options. I think, our services are designed to give you real and definite feedback on your products.
Sure.
And that's direct from the market. So we can test the market for you. We can give you a very good indication of potential interest in a very cost-effective way. And at the end of the day, it's only by talking to potential partners or customers that will give you a good idea of whether a particular European market looks positive for you,
Sure.
or whether we should spend more time on another market. So, that's where we can certainly help to see if you're of interest.
Yeah, clearly it's not a market to be ignored because it's a total population combined EU of 513 million consumers. It's a sophisticated market and they're wealthy markets. So there's always a continual demand for U.S. products in that region of the world. Sometimes we have a tendency to chase the shiny and new in terms of the developing markets around the world. And then maybe ignore a little bit the opportunity that still exists for American companies in Europe. So, we always talk about the special relationship that the U.S. has with the UK. So with that, I'd like to ask you, what is the viewpoint from London regarding the current state of two-way trade and investment relations between the UK and the US? As you know, there's been much discussion about a free trade agreement between our two nations. What's your take on that?
Yeah. Whilst Brexit has given the UK independence and the ability to be agile, but the UK is still stronger together with other nations. And the feeling in the UK is very positive towards a close relationship with the US. We've always been close trading allies, and the current government is looking very positively towards securing the free trade agreement with the US. They've still got some sticking points to iron out, but it's in both sides' interest to continue to develop our strong relationship, and we feel absolutely sure that the discussions will continue this year.
Right. Well, the UK and Europe, the UK and US, they need each other to be globally competitive. So final question, beyond the obligatory due diligence, what piece of advice would you give to US companies entering the European market for the first time?
Yeah. So how long have we got? No, 1 point. The most important advice is to fully explore the market before investing in developing that market, to understand the structure of the sector that you plan to sell into, the routes to market for your product, which could be very different actually in each European country. Examine the competition, assess market size, see what the end user segment might look like, check approvals. Is it just CE approval you'll need or specific product approvals? And these are all things that we can do for you.
Right.
Our services, again, they're designed to give you a good overview of the sector, what you can expect to come up with, what sort of support or investment you might need to put in place to develop that new business. And this information can also help you to decide which of your unique selling points would be most attractive to the UK or European buyers. What are they looking for? What have they possibly not got locally that you could bring to them? And being made in the US is the perfect starting point. And in Europe, made in America is seen as a very good indication of quality. But on its own, it's not enough. We need to be able to differentiate your product, your service, your technology in the local market and pinpoint exactly what will help you to sell.
Right, right. I think you hit on something that's really critical. I've been preaching this to the small and mid-sized companies that are interested in exporting their products around the world. That the Made in America label really carries a lot of weight because, as you suggested, it's an indication of quality, and then furthermore, highly innovative. The aftermarket service is excellent. So, most American companies don't realize how respected. Having their product, service, or technology being made out of the U.S. And all things being equal, if you were to compare American products to other products being manufactured around the world, most people would gravitate toward that made product. But clearly, we have to caution that it's not, you just can't rely on that to carry the day. I mean, you mentioned that there's other things that you need to do. Obviously, differentiate your product and be able to quickly articulate the value added as it relates to that specific company. So we got 2 minutes left. So I'm going to give you the final thoughts. Terry, anything you'd like to do to wrap this up?
Yes, I think I was thinking, how can we use this time while we can't travel? And it's a very positive time to create awareness. We've got the opportunity to undertake these virtual market visits, have exploratory conversations online, virtual meetings. It's a time when we can join trade associations or invest in social media. Especially while physical exhibitions and events are on hold. European companies are more likely to take a product with a track record in Europe, or at least one that has more local visibility. And again, these are all things that we, through Automation Alley and the MEDC, can help support Michigan and other US companies with. We can find you those business partners and help you increase your export business.
Absolutely. And, you've done a wonderful job with that. And just so you know, Automation Alley and our members will never take you for granted. So, Terry, we want to thank you very much for spending a little time with us today. We're looking forward to talking to you again down the road, particularly when the world starts to open up again. But, just in closing, I think that, things around the world are getting so much better. So I'm really optimistic about this year and the years to follow. And Terry, I think you've done a great job in terms of covering the salient points of how companies can do business in Europe and do it effectively, especially with. I want to circle back to the backing of the state of Michigan, our partners at the MEDC, and as Automation Alley's we're Industry 4.0 Knowledge Center in Michigan, we're finding that the assistance that you provide has been invaluable in the last few years. So thank you so much again, and we'll look forward to talking to you again down the road.
Thank you, Noel. It was a pleasure.
All right. Thank you, Terry. Take care.